like when you're walking into a situation, especially when the situation is not a violent situation, when you're being called, maybe it's a domestic violence call or something else.
Hang on a minute. Did she really just say when you're going on a non-violent call, like domestic violence?
Especially when the situation is not a violent situation, when you're being called, maybe it's a domestic violence call or something else.
Yep, that's what she said. And she is a city council person.
And to work on that, what's something that we could do interpersonally to help with that situation? What are a couple of things you could recommend?
I mean, I think, some of it is tone of voice, like when you're walking into a situation, especially when the situation is not a violent situation, when you're being called, maybe it's a domestic violence call or something else, understanding that you are there to help. And what are the ways that you can demonstrate help, especially when language is a barrier, right? Your tone of voice, your body language, how you are looking people in the eye, right? I think a lot of times, I sometimes find that when people have an accent or you don't understand the language, people tend to raise their voice.
So the video that you just saw was an interview with Columbus City Council member Lourdes Barrosa de Padilla. Sorry if I murdered the name. The reason this recording exists is because officers with the Columbus Division of Police Advanced Training Unit were required to get members of the minority community that could speak to police officers and tell them about how to interact with members of their community. Ms. Padilla was selected as a member of the Latino community. Not only is she a member of the Latino community, but she's also a member of city council. So who could you find that's possibly more qualified to talk to police officers than a city council person and a member of the Hispanic community? So they sat down, they did a long interview. They asked her about her childhood. She actually grew up in Columbus, Ohio. She was born here in the United States, the daughter of immigrants from Cuba. She went on to talk about how many times she'd been maced at different protest events in her life, and it seemed like something that she wore in a badge of honor. And then she went on to talk about the proper way for police officers to respond on a run. And the run that she chose to illustrate her point was domestic violence. And not only did she choose domestic violence, but in choosing that, she said a non-violent call like domestic violence. She was trying to pick a non-violent call, and she picked one of the only crimes that I can think of that literally has the word violence in the name. Not only did she choose a crime that has violence in the name, it's one of the most violent calls that police officers go on a daily basis. The danger that police officers face when responding to calls of domestic violence is very difficult to put into words. And just for a little bit of perspective, in the central Ohio area alone, just a few years ago, we lost 2 officers in Westerville, Ohio, officers Joring and Morelli. They were killed responding to a call about domestic violence. I have to hear all the time about the divide between police officers and the community that they serve. And I spend a lot of time telling people that that divide does not exist. It definitely doesn't exist the way people think that it exists, because I go to work every day. I work in an inner city neighborhood that is ridden with high crime. I can tell you for a fact that people in that neighborhood are not afraid of me. I get flagged down by people all the time. I've even had black guys with open carrying firearms walk up to my cruiser and be completely comfortable talking to me about a crime that they just witnessed. This divide that exists between police officers and the community that they serve, it primarily exists in the heads of people that don't know what they're doing, who won't take the time to learn the most basic thing about what it is that police officers do. Here we have a sitting city council member who doesn't believe that domestic violence is violence. This is a person who is literally voting on legislation. She's voting on legislation that's telling these officers exactly how they will and will not do their job. And she doesn't know the first thing about what these police officers are going through when they respond on a call like domestic violence. She complains about the way they look people in the eye. And then she goes on to talk about how people raise their voice or raise their tone. I don't even know, when they're talking to members of the Hispanic community. She was basically just making a bunch of shit up because she doesn't know what it is that she's talking about. And that's what's creating the divide in our community. There's too many people that don't know the first thing about what it is that they're saying, but they're also the first ones to open their mouths and tell police officers what to do. It's just not very often that they expose themselves in such a manner. I think that's all I got for today. I'll talk to you later.